Hello, my name is Ben, and this is the Moss Report. I'm here today with author and founder of the Moss Report, my father, Dr. Ralph W. Moss. Good morning, Dad.
Good morning, Ben.
I am really looking forward to having this conversation with you. You told me something the other day that is incredibly exciting and encouraging, and I really can't wait to share it with our audience. And that has to do with a study around the anti-cancer properties of olive oil. Can you tell us a little bit about the study that was done, and we'll get into the details in a bit?
Yes, the study came out in 2022, and it showed basically that people who had a high consumption of olive oil had far less cancer than people who had low consumption or no consumption.
Oh, you said far less. What does that mean exactly? Is there a number associated with that?
There are a couple of numbers.
Okay.
So if you they broke it down by major types of cancer. 27% reduction in colon cancer, 26% reduction in cancers of the head and mouth and the esophagus, an amazing 52% reduction in urinary tract cancers, and overall, olive oil consumption was associated with an overall reduction in the risk of cancer of, get this, 31%. Just that one factor could reduce the risk of cancer by almost one third.
Wait, you're saying that they did a study,
Yeah,
and in this study, people who had a certain amount of olive oil in their daily diet,
correct.
overall, that there were 30% or more fewer incidents of cancer throughout that population group?
Correct. Correct.
Well, that's a huge deal. I mean, that we're
Yeah,
talking about a lot of people who uh,
millions.
uh,
3 million or something per
astounding. I hope that our audience can hear my absolute just amazement at that number.
yeah.
So, when you talk about a study, can we elaborate a little bit on what that looks like?
Basically, you go out into a defined population and you give people questionnaires, and they keep a log, and they say how much oil they consumed in the course of a day, a week, or a year.
I say,
And that's typical.
mhm.
There's nothing unusual or abnormal about that. Of course, it has its limitations. Like any study, any kind of study has its own built-in issues, but no more so than if you were studying anything else relating to the population, such as smoking.
Mhm.
Much of our knowledge of the danger of tobacco smoking comes from exactly these kinds of studies. So there's nothing wrong about it or illegitimate. It's completely legitimate. I, I think we do encourage, like all scientists, and lovers of science, we believe in friendly skepticism, in the sense that we think that you should always look critically at any claim being made. And this claim would alter people's eating habits, and
Mhm.
certain people would benefit financially from that change. So you have a reason
Right.
to ask sharp questions,
Let
without
me
any
see if
doubt.
I can hit you with a few, okay?
Go ahead, try.
How do we know that a study with this kind of dramatic result has integrity? As the skeptic, I'm going to say I tend to not believe sweeping numbers and statements like that, where you're saying that there's 30% less cancers across the board based on
Yeah.
taking some olive oil. So, can you tell us more about the specific ways in which this data was collected, and how many people were involved, and in any other way that you determine that a study has integrity?
This is a type of study called a meta-analysis. So a meta-analysis aggregates or combines the results of high quality studies done by other people it's not an ordinary study in itself. They didn't go out in the field and ask people questions about their olive oil consumption. Other people did that.
And
They took
how many people were involved in total in all of these studies that they then looked at?
almost 1 million,
Wow.
extraordinarily high number. In their previous study, they only had 1,400 people. This was the follow-up to a study from 10, 11 years
I
before.
see.
And they're all people, academics at the University of Athens in Greece. And the paper was published in a top drawer uh, medical journal called PLOS One, PLOS One, highly regarded journal. And that hospital that they work at, the University of Athens, it partners with the top research center in Germany. So it gives us even more reason to believe in the accuracy of their findings. And there really are no red flags, as you find with a lot of papers that they're underpowered, or they're taking money from the industry. These people are not.
Hmm.
The industry could even write the paper. There's a lot of phony studies out there.
Hmm.
This isn't one of them.
Hmm.
This is a very it passes all the tests, the smell test, for whether this is a genuine scientific contribution or just a piece of public relations.
And would you
It's
consider yourself an expert at looking at these types of studies to determine whether they have value or not?
well, I've had about 50 years of doing this type of work. I don't know if that makes me. I'm not. I
I
wouldn't
think
be an
so.
expert
I
in
think 50
doing.
years is enough. I mean, you have been looking at these studies and
Yeah.
analyzing them for this very thing, whether they have
Right.
scientific
Yeah.
veracity or not, for the better part of 50 years, which is
Right.
almost my entire
Yeah.
life. So,
Right.
and I know I've been around them, but I don't think our audience quite gets a picture of, like, why should
Right.
they listen to you? I'm
Right. Well,
telling them now that you have been doing this for 50
right.
years.
50 years. But there's another thing, which is that for almost 10 years, I was an appointed advisor to the National Institutes of Health. So I don't think the NIH would have chosen me and kept going with me for almost 10 years of getting my input. And we were involved in the what's now the National Center for Complementary Integrative Health, was then the OAM. We were involved in helping to design studies and give input as advisors. So I feel very comfortable
So
in.
yes, you're an expert at being
Yes,
able to look at a study and determine
correct.
whether you feel like it has the markers for one that has
Right,
good validity scientifically.
right.
And you think that this one does.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I think it's extraordinary. In fact, I think it's an extraordinarily strong finding. The reason I brought it up with you, Ben, is that I was blown away by it.
Hmm.
Actually,
Hmm.
um, sometimes I find something. I mean, I look at thousands and thousands of studies in PubMed and elsewhere, and so you become a little jaded because if you see a small effect from drinking coconut juice or something, then it's like you register, you tuck that away, but it's not going to make much of an impression on you. But the origin of the study, the fact that it was a meta-analysis, the fact that it came out of a good university, the fact, but that there were almost 1 million people involved,
You mentioned it
but
had been published in a peer-reviewed journal. And
yeah, and a good one,
which one do you remember?
close, yeah, close one,
Close
close
one.
one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with
Um,
it, but
Very famous
okay.
journal, by the way, within scientific circles. And but the numbers are staggering.
Right.
In such a large study, you expect small study. They may have a statistical significance, or it may not, or a small study that shows a large effect. You still have to feel like, all right, what's going to happen when they look at the big picture?
Okay.
These people looked at the big picture,
Yeah.
and still, it was the higher level of olive oil consumption. We could talk about what that
Right.
uh, is is a 30%, 31% reduction in the risk of cancer overall. And and this added to the other health benefits of olive oil. So
Okay.
I think this is an extraordinary development, and I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop in the sense that I want to see the scientific community pick this up and realize something really major happened.
Can we be confident that the substance that they actually were getting was consistent?
Yes,
Okay.
because the quality is high in Spain, Italy, Greece, Morocco. They take their olive oil seriously,
Is that
and they
where
have
the polling of these people was taking
most of
place?
these most of these studies came out of those countries.
Let's talk about how it's actually beneficial to our audience. So, for example, if I had an active cancer and I'm taking olive oil, is that going to actually have any kind of an impact on me, do you think? Or is it more of just something that you would take in your diet if you're trying to prevent, in that way, avoid getting cancer in the first place?
I'd say overwhelmingly, it's about prevention. Overwhelmingly, that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be beneficial to cancer patients, but these are two different questions, and I'm unaware of any studies within, in a cancer patient population trying to use olive oil. Um, Now, it could be olive oil is contained in the Mediterranean diet. It's in fact the most conspicuous component within the Mediterranean diet. But and there are some studies done beginning on Mediterranean diet and cancer, but I don't think we're there yet in terms of what would be the effect in people who currently have cancer. Where it would be particularly um, relevant would be to people who are trying to prevent the recurrence of cancer or who are at a higher risk of cancer. I think it's very relevant.
How could we know whether it wasn't something else that they eat in their diet that was having this anti-cancer effect versus just this compound that's contained inside of olive oil?
It's a good question. There was this so-called PREDIMED clinical trial. Now, this was not a meta-analysis of other trials. This was and is its own clinical trial where you have an intervention compared to another couple of
What does
interventions.
that
And
mean?
these, well, in other words, they took 4,300 older women, ages 60 to 80, and they randomly assigned them to receive eh, by courier either a Mediterranean diet supplemented with extra virgin olive oil that they sent them, or some other people got a Mediterranean diet supplemented with mixed nuts, another item that may have some benefit in terms of health, or a control group that were not doing, getting any of that benefit. Um, there were 68% fewer breast cancer cases in people receiving the Mediterranean diet that was supplemented with olive oil versus the control group. This was published in 2015. So there is a actual
Wow.
clinical trial comparison between the Mediterranean diet plus olive oil. The Mediterranean diet plus nuts also had a benefit, but it wasn't as strong as the Mediterranean diet supplemented with
Ah,
olive oil. And I think we can assume, given the health habits of people in the Mediterranean countries, I think we can assume that a lot of those people were already getting olive oil.
right.
But even so, the nuts, although it's a good idea to eat some mixed nuts, not peanuts, but tree nuts,
Yeah.
uh, it didn't have the same punch that the olive oil did, and they were receiving high quality um, olive oil from the government or from the university that was doing the study. Uh, the interesting thing, if I could
No,
expound on this
please go
a
ahead.
little, a little bit, there was a survey, another survey done adjusting for all other lifestyle factors, a survey olive oil consumption was associated with a lower risk of dying and of cancer deaths in particular, and cardiovascular disease, which is, by the way, a better known benefit of olive oil.
Uh-huh.
Cardiovascular, like strokes and heart attacks,
Mm-hmm.
this is well known and
Mm-hmm.
discussed in the medical textbooks, whereas the cancer connection isn't discussed in the major textbooks. But here's the point I wanted to make.
Yeah.
This is a 2022 survey that if you got up to 1 tablespoon a day of olive oil, that was associated with a 9% lower risk of dying from any cause. 2 or more
Wait,
tablespoons,
what?
yeah,
Wait, so you take some olive oil
yeah,
and
one
you're about
tablespoon
10% less likely to
likely to
die.
die. Correct,
Okay.
correct. but,
That's pretty
but get
good.
this, Ben. But
I
get this,
mean,
Ben.
I mean,
Listen,
I'm
listen.
listening. Okay.
two, it's 2 or more tablespoons reduce the death rate by 31%.
2 or more
And
tablespoons a day
a
of
day reduce of
extra
olive
virgin
oil,
olive oil.
right?
Has to be extra
Reduce
virgin, right? Is that right?
it does,
Okay.
correct.
All right.
It
I'm going to
does.
ask you why in a minute, but okay.
Yeah.
So we got that, and then we're just
But there's
less
one more.
likely to die
But here's
by
one
that
more fact.
much.
If we
Okay.
just look at heart attack, strokes, and cancer deaths, 2 or more tablespoons, and this is crazy sounding, but
Okay.
this is
This
what
is
the
a
study
study that you're
shows.
going to be able to link to in the link.
Oh yeah,
People can look at it for themselves. So you're not just
we will
making
give
this up.
people. All right, no,
Okay.
I couldn't make this
All
stuff
right.
up.
So what's the last?
Okay, 2 or more tablespoons per day is associated with a, wait for it, 51% lower risk of cardiovascular and cancer deaths. 51. So I mean, these numbers are so high that it boggles the mind. You
Right.
would think that the world would stop turning on its axis
I want to tell you,
because,
I
yeah,
appreciate that, and I think our audience they can probably hear that that was like a lightning bolt and thunder
yes,
moment,
yeah,
just even talking about those types of numbers and their health impact.
yes, yes. So
But
yeah, so
okay, go ahead.
it isn't. That's the amount. If you want to know what the amount was, you didn't ask me, but
Yeah,
I'll underline the fact. How much do you need to get every day? It's
right.
probably between 1.5 and 2 tablespoons per day.
I mean, that's
It
manageable.
it's manageable
And we're
because
not
you should be
talking
eating a
about
salad.
nobody's done this in anything other than just eating it as part of the diet. We're not talking about an extract of the compound that's being
Nothing.
injected or
Nope.
some other way
Nope.
entered into the bloodstream.
Nope.
It's just
Right.
eating it.
Correct.
Okay.
That's it. We're just talking about I won't say plain old olive oil. It shouldn't be plain. It
Well,
shouldn't be old, but it's
yeah,
real olive oil
right.
pressed as it should be, as pure and as close to the way olive oil was made in the up until the mid 20th century as
Yeah,
possible. Meaning,
yeah.
it should be crushed and kept at a cool temperature as possible, and then just lightly filtered and put in a bottle and consumed soon after it's
Mhm.
been harvested.
And
And
I mean, it's a good tasting ingredient. I love olive oil. So,
I love it. I love it.
mhm,
I've grown to love it even more. Once I realized what unbelievable health benefits this is.
mhm,
I always knew it, but I cheated a little bit because I'd go have avocado oil, which is probably a healthful thing too.
mhm.
But why was I doing? Because I was under the impression that you couldn't saute things in
Yeah,
EVOO.
low flash point or what they call it, whatever they call
Well,
it.
it's not true though.
Okay.
It's not true. You can actually.
Mm.
You will lose about half of the antioxidants in the oil by cooking with it
In olive oil. So it's better
in
better
olive oil.
taken just in its raw state.
I always try
As a dressing or, make something out of
every day.
it
Every
naturally.
day, I try to have both. I try to have some
Okay.
raw olive oil, and on days when if I cook with it, I'm still going to try to have some raw olive oil.
Yeah.
And it's a this has been around for about 8,000 years.
Yeah.
olive oil. But
Right.
now
Wow.
it's only in the last couple of years that we're realizing what a fantastic food this is.
Yeah. Does there appear to be something specific inside of olive oil as a compound?
There's two candidates for the so-called active ingredient. One would be the oil, the mono unsaturated oils, and if you substitute those kinds of fats for saturated fats, which are considered to be less healthy, that's a whole nother discussion. Um, that would probably bring a health benefit. But my focus, maybe this is my prejudice, but I'm more focused on the polyphenols, which are kind of antioxidants. I wrote a book in, I think, the year 2000 called Antioxidants Against Cancer. And there was a fair amount of skepticism about that because people said, well, you're isolating supplements and you're advocating supplement use. Well, more advocating the use of getting your antioxidants through food. But here's but but also we can very accurately, I mean, to the tenth of a percentage point, we can measure the amount of antioxidants in olive oil.
I wouldn't want to tell people to go out to the store and just buy any old olive oil off the shelf and expect that this health benefit would be present just because.
Amazingly,
Yeah.
amazingly, some of the olive oils on the shelf in the supermarket contain no polyphenols. Those would be the ones that are labeled light, where
Okay.
they've removed
I see.
the antioxidants, many of the solid ingredients.
I
But you can actually buy olive oil, even extra virgin olive oil, with no beneficial compounds. And I would imagine, I mean, yes, the kind of oil that's in the olive oil probably is beneficial somewhat. But if you cook with a light olive oil, you're getting and there's virtually no taste to them either. So you're getting virtually no benefit. It would be a tremendous wasted opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to go do that.
Is there a way, do you think, that individual compounds or molecules could be extracted to create a kind of a medicine in the way that we tend to do here in Western culture?
I think in the case of olive oil, that you've got a perfect vehicle for the antioxidants. I think no, I wouldn't say that about resveratrol or some of the other polyphenols that have been identified over the years, the plant compounds. Some of those are just too rare within the plant, and they have to be taken, if you're going to take them at all, take them as supplements. But the olive oil can contain as much as 1,200 milligrams per kilogram of oil of polyphenols, which is a high.
Polyphenols?
Yes, the polyphenols, the antioxidants.
Okay, so that is
Yeah.
a specific, it's one
What-
particular, it's a group
No,
of
there's a
molecules?
couple of, there's a group of them.
Okay.
Some of them seem to have more effect on cancer than they do, and others have more effect
And
cardiovascular.
was the study that was done in Greece in particular about polyphenols?
No,
Okay,
just on olive oil.
I see.
No, I doubt if we're ever going to get to the point where I don't think we need to. I
Okay,
think, I think it's so powerful.
the oil,
Olive oil is so
right.
powerful that if it's going to have an effect, it'll have an effect. But I think you have to have a good, solid, reliable source of olive oil with a relatively high polyphenol content. Now, luckily for us, some of the California olive oils are as good as almost as good as the European ones, and that's wonderful. So, and doesn't require sitting in a tanker in Naples Harbor,
True.
or Genoa or whatever. So we're not without, and South America too, Argentina and some of the other countries. There's a lot of countries that produce good
It
olive
doesn't
oils.
really matter where the olives come from.
It
Okay,
does, and there are many varieties of olives, and
I
some
see.
of them have much more polyphenols. You
I
see,
see.
the thing is, polyphenol content produces the the characteristic sharpness of the olive oil. You can tell pretty
Okay.
well
I'm.
how much polyphenol or antioxidants there is in the olive oil by tasting it properly.
Hmm.
And we could have a whole video on how you taste and test an olive oil.
Mhm.
But by and large, you won't get that characteristic tickle in the back of the throat by from the olive oil from an olive oil that doesn't have polyphenols, and vice versa. I can tell, and I'm not an olive oil expert. I'm just a olive oil lover. I'm not an olive oil expert. I know a little bit about the science of it,
Mhm.
but I can tell from tasting olive oil how much I can put a pretty accurate number
Hmm.
in terms of how many milligrams per kilogram of polyphenols are in that oil because I've tasted enough of them. And when you get that tickle,
Yeah.
it's hard to describe, but you'll know it when you feel it. It's almost a sharpness, and I like it. I find it very pleasant, but that's what makes for a high polyphenol olive oil. That's the one you're looking for. And I have on my shelf, I have olive oils that have 1,200 milligrams. Typically, if you're in the range of 300 or 400, you're doing very well. 300, but I don't need to take as much olive oil with my 1,200
Yeah.
milligram olive oil as I would with somebody who was taking one that had very, very less.
Can you reliably just eat olives
Yeah,
as a way of getting these olive oil?
yeah,
So if I'm trying to get 2 tablespoons of olive oil in my diet, does that mean I have to eat like 50 olives, or would eating
yeah.
3, 4, or a half a dozen of them
No,
a day be enough?
no, it won't be enough. And besides, olives have to be processed to take away the extreme bitterness of the tannins
I say.
in the olives. They have a lot of salt in them.
Hmm.
So as you're getting some of the polyphenols from the olive, especially good quality ones, but you're also getting an undesirable amount of sodium. See, there is a dose response curve with the amount of oil you get
I see.
and the amount and the protection against cancer and heart disease and these other maybe Alzheimer's.
So really, a
So
good amount of this stuff.
yeah, you need a couple of tablespoons a day, which isn't an inconsiderable amount. Now I drink it.
Yeah.
I drink it. If I haven't gotten it on a salad, yeah, I like it. I
Really?
like it. Oh yeah. I put it in a brandy
I mean, I
snifter.
like it on, with a dressing for salad.
I do. Oh,
Olive.
I do too. But I've gotten
I've
used to
never
it.
had it just like as a tablespoon in my mouth. I guess I'll have to try that. And we'll see how it
You,
goes. Maybe
it's
I'll
an
make a little
it's
video of myself trying to get it down. I
It's
don't
an let me put it this way: it's an acquired taste.
know. All right. Well, we'll give
But
it a
when you know,
try.
yeah,
So then I had another question, but it relates back to this question about to what you were saying about polyphenols.
yeah,
So they're an antioxidant.
yeah,
And you've written in your book Antioxidants Against Cancer that
yeah,
antioxidants, in your opinion, seem to have
yeah,
a proven anti-cancer effect.
yeah,
And some of the supplements and so forth that we recommend, and some of the articles that you've written and so forth on the Moss Report,
hmm,
certainly point to them having value. So is it then? I'm going to put you on the spot here. So
sure,
you said that the study was not in particular about polyphenols as a substance, that the study
right,
was olive
right,
oil. And
yes,
so we know that polyphenols exist within olive oil, but did this people who did the study draw any conclusions about the relationship between these anti-cancer effects
no,
and the polyphenols, or
no,
is that your conclusion based on your
right,
knowledge of the subject?
right. I'm putting a couple of things together here.
Okay.
Something in olive oil, broadly speaking, is enormously protective against cancer. What could that be? Well, is a couple of candidates here, and we know from other studies that the polyphenols uh, from laboratory studies kill cancer cells. And what gets me particularly excited is that there are now 2 or 3 studies showing that components of olive oil kill cancer stem cells. This
Okay.
brings us full circle around to my other obsession, which is CSCs, cancer stem cells.
Right. If the polyphenols are the substance in olive oil that you believe have this anti-cancer property, then how do we know whether the olive oil that we're trying to get here in the United States, for example, has those polyphenols in it? Is there any real way to tell? And I mean, I'm assuming that you're saying if they don't contain that, then eating the olive oil wouldn't have that property at all.
Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
So let's divide it into two different groups: the supermarket olive oils and the specialty olive oils. So the supermarket olive oils, almost none of them, if I haven't seen any, that list the amount of polyphenols on the label.
I
Nor,
see.
nor do the websites tell you how much they have. We know from independent testing that some of the olive oils that are in the supermarket have no polyphenols. These would be the so-called light olive oils, the ones that are used for frying. There's very little anti-cancer benefit from eating those olive oils. However, the only company that markets supermarket olive oils, to my knowledge, that are robust in terms of polyphenols is the California Olive Ranch.
Oh, okay.
And I emailed them. They were extremely cooperative once I sent them an email, and I asked for the polyphenol content for some of their olive oils, and the lady there sent me back a complete list of all their products and how many polyphenols. Now, polyphenols are measured milligram per kilogram. That's a
Okay.
tiny amount within a larger bottle or keg of olive oil, milligrams per kilo.
Got it.
I'm not going to do the math, but anyway, hundredths of the total amount. But that's enough. That relatively small amount makes a big difference in terms of health maintenance and cancer prevention. So what I found by doing that, by texting them or emailing them and then going to the store and shopping, was that well, there's two ways to go. One is that they make the familiar square bottle California Olive Ranch. They have about 10 different varieties of this. And then they also own Lucchini Italian or olive oil. So you could go one of two ways. Lucchini is their higher end brand. It's a little bit more expensive. It's about $25 a bottle, but it doesn't have that much more in the way of polyphenols than this one. This one that I'm holding up is called California Olive Ranch Robust, Bold and Peppery Extra Virgin Olive Oil. It's a bargain. It's something like $7 for this bottle. So it's cheap, cheap, cheap. And it comes from a global blend from Argentina, Portugal, Chile, and 10% California.
I see.
So this contradicts sort of rule number one in shopping for olive oil, which is you always try to get from a unique location, either from one particular um, uh, estate
Yeah.
or from a region or at least from a country. They always tell this is how you think about quality of olive oil. And as a general rule, this is true. You don't want to get something that's been sitting in sludge at the bottom of a
Right.
tanker.
Right.
You want to get something that comes from a known place, a known estate. It's a little bit like wine, very much like wine, actually. Uh, Olive oil, by the way, just a little historical footnote, that they've excavated ships from the bottom of the Mediterranean, and they have these giant Greek jugs, and in them they always assumed that these were wine containers, but they found residue of olive oil in some of these jugs. So the trade in olive oil and wine go hand in hand throughout history. And there's a lot of similarities between the two products. But there's a couple of things. One is that it's the opposite of wine in that you don't want aged olive oil. You want the freshest possible olive oil. Olive oil is like juice, so you want it to be as fresh as possible.
Mhm.
That's one thing. And another one is that you can look online very often and they'll show you the certificate of analysis of the olive oil, which tells you how many polyphenols there are in the particular product.
I see. So
And
you
in
wouldn't
fact,
find that, okay, you wouldn't find that on Amazon. You'd have to go to the actual website of the company that's making it.
usually, or
It's
sometimes,
not on the label, you're saying.
it's not on the label, but it's sometimes at the Amazon website. They'll give a number, and if they're really scrupulous, they'll back it up with a report from a local laboratory
Okay,
showing to the tenth of a milligram how much polyphenols there are.
I see. But does olive oil have a freshness date on it? I mean, how do we know if we're going into the store? You're saying it's better if it's fresher. How do we know when it was actually pressed versus when it was bottled or when it arrived at the shelf? Or how do we know about the freshness?
It's a great question because they all list the best by date, consume by date, which is kind of meaningless because they can arbitrarily set how long they think you can keep the olive oil on the shelf.
I see.
The longer it sits on the shelf, the more those antioxidants or polyphenols are disappearing.
Mm.
Exposure to light will make them disappear. Exposure to oxygen will make them disappear.
One would assume a darker bottle would be better, or a
Correct.
green bottle
Absolutely.
to
And
avoid
then
that
should
oxidation
be
and the UV.
stored in a cool, dark environment. Now, in this one brand that I'm looking at, they do the right thing. They say harvest date 2021 to 2022. So this being 2023, I'm looking for a 2022 harvest. Um, it says best by October 4th, 2024. So they're giving themselves 2 or 2.5 years for this to still be good on the shelf. But
So within a year, you feel it still has the good properties or so?
within the year, but I'm always, this being in the springtime, I'm looking for fresh olive oil on the shelves. That really, in my area, very few have shown that. The reason that this one came in with a 2022 label has to do with the fact that it's coming from Argentina and Chile, because
Uh-huh.
their seasons are opposite of the northern
Oh,
part of the planet. So therefore, their 2022 would be like our 2021.
I
So
see.
it isn't as fresh as you'd want it to be. Now, if you want a really fresh olive oil, you have to go for something like this, which is
Uh-huh.
has Novello on the label.
I see.
Novello Italian Reserve. This came from Trader Joe's. No
Uh-huh.
connect, no financial
No, not sponsored.
right, not a sponsor. But anyway, you can see I've gone through most of that, and that comes out
Uh-huh.
in about January. So this was the first pressing of the olives. This happens to be from Italy, and that's good because that means the best olive oils are going to be the first pressing of the olive oil, and they tend to be stronger and have more of the antioxidants than the later pressings, which are good, can be good also. But there's a special quality to these fresh or novello
I
olives.
mean, would it be fair to say that if someone buys one of these boutique olive oils that
Mhm.
costs a lot of money, that has that Novello label on that's likely going to contain those properties?
Some more than the ordinary would.
I mean,
Then I,
even if you didn't see the certificate of
yeah,
analysis
right,
on
correct.
the website or what have you, if it looks, I mean, is there a way to just look at it visually? That one was in a clear bottle, I noticed.
Yeah,
They want you to see the color of it. So if you can see the color,
green.
does the color make a difference? Can you sort of tell by looking at it?
A little bit, but not enough to
In
make you.
what way? Like, is it greener? Is it yellower?
Well, there's so many varieties of
Yeah,
olives, and some of them are, but the green olives, the olives when they're green are the ones that are picked first and haven't been allowed to turn black, which
I
doesn't
see.
make them bad. It just means they're riper.
Uh-huh.
But the concentrated polyphenols are more in the first pressing. Now, I also got this, which goes against everything I've just said, because this has a best buy date of 2023. But the great thing about this is it came from my local Greek restaurant, and the owners of the local Greek restaurant own like 200 olive trees in Sparta, and they're pressing their own olives in Sparta and then selling it in their restaurant. So I mean, and it's very useful. It's very tasteful. I can tell, but because I've referred before to the peppery bitter
Yeah.
taste in the back of your mouth, which is a whole
Hmm.
art. It's like just
Hmm.
like the art of wine tasting. There's an art of olive oil tasting, which we needn't go into in detail. But
Well,
there is a characteristic um, f- feeling along the sides of the mouth and the back of the throat that you get from a high polyphenol. This is mid range, I'd say.
interesting.
Very inexpensive, very tasty.
Hmm.
And I know the folks who,
Right.
I had long conversations with these people.
It's not super relevant to our audience
No,
because they're not going to be able to get that brand. But
well, but I
I
was
think,
in, I was
okay,
in, excuse me, I was in Providence, Rhode Island once with one of your children, and
okay,
we stopped in at a Greek restaurant slash deli, and they had in the back they were doing olive oil tastings, and they had their own
I see.
source because there's so many farm olive oil farmers. And it isn't you can bring the olive oil to the mill, and the mill takes like 8% of the oil in
I
exchange
see. The
for
olives come in and then they press
correct.
them and then
If
they
you
get
got if you have a farm with
right,
maybe 100 trees, you can make your own olive oil. So I
right.
wouldn't say it's impossible for our viewers to establish the same kind of relationship that we did locally. But I don't rely for my health on that oil.
Yeah, I see.
So what I do, I get specialty oils over the internet where I
Hmm.
can see the certificate and I
Hmm.
have complete faith and trust that I'm getting the high quality because these are phenomenal.
Well,
Some of
we have a couple of, I know that there are a couple that you want to mention, in
yeah,
particular, the Life Extension brand.
the life extension, uh, it's a good flavored, nice tasting oil. But the main reason is because it has over 600 milligrams per kilogram of polyphenols.
I say.
Uh, so that's a very good score.
And do you know where their olive oil hails from in terms of the olives themselves?
Yes, it comes from a single ranch in Northern California.
Hmm.
It's
I was going
a
to
rare
ask.
entry into
Yeah.
the quality sweepstakes, as it were, coming from California, but they have some relationship with this ranch. And it
I
comes in at
mean,
about, last year was about 632 milligrams per kilogram, which is very good, very high. And the price is reasonable. It's like 25 bucks.
that's great. I think that for the sake of freshness, it seems like not having to go through the bureaucracy of waiting for the European testing
Yeah,
and the importing process on a ship and then the packaging of it and so forth.
yeah,
That seems like it would take longer than an olive oil producer here in the United States. Some people might prefer to buy from a American-based company. In any case, there are those.
well, there have been
And here
such
they are.
scandals. There have been
Yeah,
such scandals in the quality of extra virgin olive oil that it makes you hesitate to
yeah,
buy from Italy in particular.
yeah.
But now they cleaned up a lot of that.
Well, we like life extension as a company. We feel
Yeah,
like the people who are doing the buying for them are very quality conscious around
yeah.
their supplements. And I guess in this case, it's the same for their olive oil.
Hmm.
Um, you said it's about $25 and it would just be,
Or
so we'll link.
500 milliliters, half a liter.
Uh-huh. And is that the one that has the highest number of polyphenols that you've
No,
been able to have
no,
documented?
no.
So what else is out there?
Well, I bought two for, and these are new pressings. So this one, it's it's called
Hmm.
Entimo
Hmm.
Intenso Italiano Extra
Hmm.
Virgin. This is a half size bottle. It's 250 milliliters, and I don't know. This was, I forget the price. 20
And
20
is it list
says
polyphenols?
2022 harvest.
Okay.
So they were right on the spot. There are companies like this that are right
Right.
on the spot. They know there's a smaller market for high quality, high polyphenol olive oils people are taking for health and also for the taste. I mean, I wouldn't discount the taste part of it. Very mild, I would say, as compared to the robust, California olive
California.
ranch,
Hmm.
but high. I forget the exact number of the
Hmm.
polyphenols, but it's right, it's up there. And then the one that I've sort of become my go-to is this one. They don't make any.
No, I see that. Wow.
What does it say? Polyphenol
They're right
rich.
out in front
They're
of
not.
this
It's
whole.
right out in the open.
I know
And
somebody. People are looking for it now because it's starting to catch on.
yeah, yeah. And this one says harvest 2022, 2023. Best by 20 February 28th, 2025, which
And
that's
it's in a light proof can. It's in metal instead of inside of
metal.
a glass
Metal,
bottle.
which keeps the light out more
Right.
and keeps the oxygen air out.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't affect the taste. The metal, it's coated with something.
Right.
It's called olive from the raw. It used to be have another Italian Sole Che Sorge, pardon my
Where'd
pronunciation.
you get it?
Internet, I think Amazon.
Hmm.
It wasn't terribly expensive,
All right. We'll look it up and
but
put a
it's
link in the
this is
description.
I think this is 1,400 milligrams per kilogram.
Wow.
Yes. So that's going to be maybe 5 times the what you'd get in polyphenol.
Amazing.
Yes.
So
And
I have a question though.
mhm,
You've said that there have been scandals in the olive oil industry
yeah,
relating to purity and the regulation of it and how long it sits and
yeah,
doesn't get shipped and so forth.
yeah.
Um, I guess my question is, how do I know that the people who are producing that olive oil in that can there, they come up with that number of 1100 or what have you? How do we know that that's not just some marketing thing? And who's going to hold them accountable if they just put a number on there and it doesn't mean anything?
I
Does it mean
agree.
anything?
It means a lot, the
Okay.
number, but this particular, when I was just looking at this last night, um, there's the certificate of authenticity or of analysis, the COA,
Yeah.
for this. It's in Italian.
Okay.
I took the name of the laboratory and I Googled that, and I could see that it's actual laboratory that exists in this town in Sicily, and there's no red flags about it, the usual thing. That is it, a post office box or something? No,
Right.
it's it's plus the company has been around a long time. They're based in the US. They're in Yonkers, actually,
Oh, is that right?
New York. Yeah. um, there a little bit of faith involved in this, but they didn't fake. It's a real certificate of authenticity from a real laboratory. Now, there are different ways of judging these milligrams, the amount of polyphenols, but they say that their method is actually more rigorous than some of what you see on the internet. And then the taste factor, it packs a wallop.
Hmm.
So, in a good sense.
That
So I
peppery flavor that you were
oh
describing.
yeah, oh yeah. And as I said earlier, I have this weird, I've gotten to this weird habit of sometimes just drinking the olive oil because some days I don't
I'm
get.
going to try it. I want to try it, but
I cook with, of course, I cook with it, but I don't cook with these high end, expensive ones. But
mhm.
I also go. I also have a Spanish a food store in my town, and I get
Mhm.
this, which
Mm,
isn't terribly expensive, ten
another
bucks,
tin.
10 bucks, and this is the Spanish oils have a distinctive flavor of their own, and I might use this in cooking. I'll certainly this morning I cooked some okra. I like to sort of saute okra, and I cook it. I cooked it in this robust one, and then I can get some of the benefit, but you're only getting about half if you cook with olive oil.
Because the cooking process just helps break down those molecules so you don't
Yep.
get them all. So better to include it either, like you're saying, just by the tablespoon as a supplement, or to put it as a dressing for salad or something like that, where you're
Yeah.
eating it in its natural state.
Yeah. If I ate bread, which I don't generally do,
Yeah.
I could sop it up with some bread, or you
Well,
could you,
yeah. Go ahead.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
or some other food, or like for instance, Belgian endive is very good for scooping up some oil, and you feel like you're eating. You feel like a complete geek, olive oil
Hmm.
geek, just
Hmm.
drinking it down.
Well, I actually no, because the caprese salad I enjoy,
Yeah,
tomatoes and basil and mozzarella.
absolutely.
That's kind of as close as I get, I think, to eating it just sort of in
Yeah,
its natural state, because I will sort of spoon it up off the plate when it's been mixed with those things and a little
absolutely.
salt and so forth. So
It's
makes it a little
delicious.
more palatable, but easy enough to get down. I mean, it is a delicious product, and I also enjoy
Yeah,
cooking with it, and I love it as a salad dressing. Well, I think the next step for me then is really to try to take this incredibly valuable information and guidance that you've offered and try to put it into more actionable things where I go out and try to find some in the grocery store, and I'll bring our audience along, and maybe that'll be part of this video, or maybe it'll be on its own in an adventure that I'll take independently.
that'd be great.
But thanks very much for providing us with all that guidance and all the background about the study and the value and the properties in the olive oils and how to find the best ones that are going to have the best anti-cancer properties.
You're welcome.
For the Moss Report, I'm Ben Moss. How are you healing today?